Good morning, Chris.
Hey, good morning, Don.
So today we're going to talk about some of the journey that our different customers have gone down over the years in deciding servers versus someone else's servers versus what does it mean to have cloud? What does it mean to have hybrid? We talked a little bit before the show about what does that even mean? How do we even have that conversation? And so that's the topic for today. In my experience, the very first stuff I ever did was not so much MES, but SCADA first. And for me, we used to install SCADA on workstations. There would be a computer in an area, and we'd install the SCADA system, and there'd be another node on the other side of the plant, and another node, and another node, and kind of the first consolidation was, hey, we're going to put a server in a server room, consolidate all the different screens and programming from all the different nodes, and we're going to serve those out on thin clients on the shop floor. And that provided a way for a maintenance crew to swap out a thin client, add an IP address back to the new thin client, and you're back up and running in minutes. Meanwhile, the server never stopped running, never stopped collecting data, never stopped interacting with it. And my first experience with MES was the customer had a server in a closet somewhere, and it was networked to PCs on the floor that were collecting data from historian collectors and SCADA nodes and things like that. And that MES ran on a box in a closet, and they had a version. They were never going to change the version of MES unless they were forced to. They were not interested in changing the versions of Windows OS or SQL based systems.
Until maybe IT security stuff crept up on them, right? Yeah, they'd just pour concrete on it. It's good how it is. Lock it in.
Yeah, and
Back on those early versions of Proficy, I mean, there wasn't much reason to push you forward as far as features and functionality too at that time.
Yeah, and until recently, you had a thick client that was installed on PCs on the shop floor. In some cases, you used a thick client that was on the server, on a Windows image on the server, and used a thin client to access it. There were lots of different strategies with that, but for the most part, it was a server in the customer's plant, sometimes multiple servers before the virtualization stuff happened.
Physical servers. Yeah.
So so then we went from multiple physical servers to virtualized servers on one physical piece of hardware. Now, then data centers that were owned by the company and maintained at a site, and then rented space in other people's data centers. And then I would say just as a timeline to start us out here, that then other private clouds on an AWS environment or an Azure environment, and then SaaS offered by vendors for different softwares. And we use a lot of different SaaS programs in our business. For our business system is cloud-based. Our project management system is cloud-based, and so obviously 365. So email and all of our Microsoft stuff. But the world is changing, and it's no longer easy to pour concrete on something because so much changes all the time, and the world of cybersecurity and ransomware and all that requires so much more attention on a regular basis. Hence the merge IT OT convergence. So what do you think is probably the first time you worked with a customer when you were like, oh, this is different. This is how I used to do things, and we're going to do something different this time?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the 2000s, it was everything had its own server, and that was even when we would do our training environments. We'd have to install Excel and stuff like that. Just going to virtual machines was was a fun little step. And like you said, you on one server, physical server, then you could start putting multiple um, virtual servers, which Proficy, you'd want one for historian if you have an enterprise level implementation in time.
So in 2020, 2021, 2022, we must have done 60 upgrades for clients. I mean, it was a lot, so much so that we had concert t-shirts made to kind of celebrate it. The 2021 Proficy upgrade tour, and on the back it had the cities and states where, I mean, it was just like my Def Leppard shirt back in the day. And
it was a classy shirt.
Yeah,
I still have it.
It was super cool. We did a couple of generations of it, and it's fun. But during those upgrades, a lot of people were facing major infrastructure upgrades, major SQL, OS, PC upgrades. So a lot of the upgrades we did were not upgrade in place. Most of the upgrades we did were not upgrade in place. It was, we have this new infrastructure. We have shop floor data nodes. We have, or data collectors. We have a server 1,000 miles away, and we have a new network infrastructure, and all of that became a part of how we upgraded, tested, whatever, installed plant applications. And I think the first upgrade that I personally was involved in helping to test, it was a customer who had an on-site server who was putting a new on-site server on, but they had a dedicated piece of physical hardware, and now it was multiple virtual machines in the same physical hardware platform. But their network was new. The data acquisition nodes, or the historian collectors on the floor, were all new, all different. They still, of course, I think the upgrade was going to Plant Apps version 7, and that had the ThingWorks component as the UI, but it also had it still relied a lot on the thick client. And I think that customer still uses the thick client even with the most modern version. But that server upgrade, we built, they had a small window, a weekend for us to stand up the new system, but we spent months ahead of time standing up new servers, testing acquisition of data, testing all the new systems, testing versions of the new thick client, figuring out what was compatible and what wasn't, testing out all the new integrations and everything to ERP and to shop floor systems.
Yeah.
But that, for me, was that was the first time we went from, hey, I'm going to install something on this computer, to we're going to install this whole virtual environment on one piece of hardware. And if we move the plant, we can pick up this one box, and have our entire MES with us.
That was one of the advantages of virtual machines, was our upgrade path became a lot easier, in the sense, and the variability was reduced, because you could take snapshots of those virtual machines or backups and restore them. So not only was it in case you made a mistake, but it is built into our plan for traditional Proficy upgrades, that you could have a baseline, take a snapshot, do all your test installations, vet it out, take out all those wrinkles, get all the cases open, and then reset it and try it again, and prove that you can do it all in one shot. Because a traditional Proficy upgrade requires you to have a blackout period of a couple of hours, where you're moving the database over from the old system to the new one. And so I would say that was a big advantage with virtual machines, was the ability to reduce that variability and like you said, test things out, make sure it works, and then have the confidence going into the final go live.
I think in 2023, we had a customer who their factory was new in 2020. They had just gone online in 2020. They had all physical hardware infrastructure, but it was all leased, and it was time to refresh it. And they made the call to put their entire automation platform in the cloud, in an AWS environment, a private cloud. And I mean, some of the software in their infrastructure wasn't built for that. There were tools like Bartender to print labels and things like that Bartender's a great software, but it's not a server class multi-site. It's a label printing tool.
It's meant to be right there,
Yeah.
for the action. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have things like, well, we want to put our historian collectors in the cloud. What are the ramifications of that? And they spent time and effort to make sure that their network, both the virtual connection to their network and all those servers and the physical connection, provided the redundancy and the reliability that said it doesn't matter whether this server for the historian collector is in the room or not. We have the same level of connection. We have the same reliability, the same backup, the same switch over. But
That
was
caught,
go ahead.
that caught my attention because the general, just for the general audience, the idea is that you want those collectors as close to the metal as possible so that you don't miss any electrons that are sending those signals. And so when they said we're going to put it up in our AWS private cloud, it was I'm ready to learn. What are you guys doing?
Yeah. In fact, I think we said, no, you don't want to do that. Like, you want your collectors on the floor so that when the lights go out to the cloud, and the network, external network goes down, that you still are pumping data from your machines. And their assertion was, we cannot run without plan apps. So if we don't have a connection to our cloud-based system, we're not going to be producing anything anyway, and the data is irrelevant. And then they went on to say, and by the way, we have high-speed internet, redundant, and cellular backup, and you're just like, okay, this is new. This is all new to us.
And it's really becomes one of those, don't try this at home, right? And unless you're ready for it. And so their IT department is very talented, and they understood what they were getting into. We let them know about the implications, and they've decided to move forward, and it's proven well for them. And that's just as an example of the difference between a manufacturing execution system, where if you're running, you can't run without it. It's helping you to execute things. I think a lot of times people have manufacturing information systems where if it went down, you'd still be able to work. You'd have your mitigations and your ability to write stuff on paper or whatever your machines can run. When do those decision makers actually come in and say, we can't run if Proficy is down? That to me is when you switch over to an execution system. And so these are the things that we're talking about during this the session together. Is just there's so many different permutations that you can do for something. What is the right place for someone to land? And that's another one too, is do you have that redundancy? Could you actually afford to put your collectors up in the cloud? Or does it just make more sense a collector just needs a PC or workstation, it doesn't need a really heavy duty piece of hardware or a lot of IT care. It is one of those things that you can set and forget. So just to kind of bring in the majority of where the rest of the audience might land.
Yeah. The other considerations are, if there is no physicality, nobody can stick a thumb drive in it. And inadvertently, it's not like any of our customers have a lot of employees trying to thwart the system, right? Employees are great at making sure that things stay cool, but people make mistakes, and a thumb drive comes in on a vendor who's maintaining a machine. He thinks the PC's connected to his machine that he's there to service, and he plugs a thumb drive in and introduces something, not even necessarily a virus, but something disruptive to the environment. That doesn't exist if everything is in the cloud. That opportunity doesn't exist. So that's one thing. And then there's the continuous threat from the outside world, the world of ransomware and everything else. And that doesn't matter where the servers are. It only matters how secure the infrastructure is. And the need now to not set it and forget it and put the concrete on it. I like that metaphor you used earlier. But to be constantly in the latest version, in the latest updates, taking advantage of the features and functions of the latest stuff. It's the development in terms of Proficy and the Velotic software packages. Now the improvements and feature additions are coming all the time, and part of the value add of having a live system that gets updated on a regular basis, whether you're letting them host it in the form of SaaS, which we'll talk about in a minute, or just on your private cloud, having access to the latest and greatest features and functionality is what business is all about now. Flexibility and being ready for change and those fun things. So,
and moving towards zero downtime.
Moving towards zero downtime
for regular production and for upgrades as well. Is where my mind was at.
Being able to swap out a microservice, turn one on and turn the old one off, and now you're upgraded. It's incredible how things are going. So I didn't mention this before. We've talked about it before on at least one of these shows, but in 2021, you were working with the same customer we were just talking about, actually, in their research and development center. We installed Proficy on an AWS environment. I think it was the first time anyone had done it anywhere. And it was version 8.0, and it was problematic, and we worked through all the things, certificate problems and like all the things, right? There's a long list of
a lot of hurdles, and there's a couple of individuals that the Rain owes a great debt to, because we went from being Proficy experts to certificate and AWS experts, and the team really went to battle for that.
Yeah, no joke about that. I think we spent a couple of days at the customer's research and development center with a couple of great people from our team, just trying to figure some stuff out. And ultimately, we got 8.0 working on an AWS environment way before anybody else was trying to do that. I'm sure there are other clients out there that did it, but I know that the integrator community complained because they couldn't get the software installed in their environments easily. And some of them just gave up. We had the team that worked through it. Awesome, right?
It was the bleeding edge.
Then that customer took their entire automation set in their production environment and put it in AWS, private cloud, like we just talked about, and took almost 9 months to get everything ready. And we're talking about, 50 or so different systems that moved from an on-prem to cloud, and MES was just one of them. And it was a team of people. Hey, shout out to TechStream. When we moved Proficy to the entire automation stack from on-prem servers to AWS, TechStream was there to be the guys that were the AWS experts, that were the remote networking, virtual networking experts. Man, they made life better.
They made it awesome.
And they educated us along the way. Like, they didn't try to protect that knowledge for themselves. They were educating the customer. They were educating us. So shout out to TechStream.
It was a true team effort. And just the differences. You had mentioned things that are things going to go up in the cloud, or are they going to stay on-prem, like Bartender or whatever the decisions were. Also, we went away from the traditional SQL database to AWS's version, and all the complications that come with that. Learning about S3 data buckets instead of normal file services. The world just changed, is the point, right? And to understand with each turn, whether we were integrating with another system or just dealing with the lift and shift. A lot of learning lessons there. If anybody's interested in it, we've gone through we've made the grooves. We learned it along the way. So
and so after the first time in the cloud, and then the moving of the entire tech stack, it wasn't much more than a year later that we had our first opportunity with Proficy SaaS. Yep. And the first one was a big one, and it was important to Velotic, and it was important to Rain, and obviously it was mission critical to our customers that we got it right. And it was really the first big SaaS implementation, and it's ongoing.
Yep.
But we've been helping this client for a couple of years now, 3 years. We're in year 3.
And it's been a collaboration with the Velotic team. That's how we know it was important to everybody, is that we went from, being able to get the hold of the vendor engineering team is not easy. And it was front and center for everybody. And it was a great collaboration. Learned a lot just in getting the system up and running. And now it's being used around the world.
Yeah, everybody knows that we are a Proficy partner. We've been a Proficy partner. Nothing but Proficy since 2020, really since 2019. But with the investment that GE Vernova was making, and now the investment, the focus that Velotic is giving to Proficy changes afoot, but the whole time, even during that transition, and I would say that transition is ongoing for them, they never wavered in support of us and that customer. And man, if you have any doubts at all about Velotic and Proficy, we're here to tell you that they never wavered in support of the customer while we were using their cutting edge, bleeding edge, really, technologies. And we were developing software and sharing it with them to help speed up the development process.
Yep.
When that customer needed something, I think we were the quick hand to help.
Big shout out to the Rain team that at every turn was right there with them, and building out some of the APIs, helping to define things, testing things out, making sure they're working. It really was a collaboration between all three companies, the vendor and the customer.
It is and continues to be an awesome experience, and they don't come along all the time. So hundreds of sites, all global, everywhere, and we're I don't know, 25 or 30 sites in, but it's an ongoing thing, and we're trying to empower the customer to do it all themselves so they can be self-sustaining. They have a great IT group and had built their own MES in the past and had all the capabilities to migrate, ultimately decided to do something off the shelf in SaaS. So
that's what it is too, right? Is putting a system in place, making sure it's going to continue to work from an integrator. That's our charge, and to hand it off, just like you were talking about. TechStream is like, we understand that eventually a company, to whatever extent they're going to want to own their own system, have the ability to do so, to make their own changes, and certainly that was our roadmap, was to train them up and let them take the lead.
So you can install Velotic's software, Proficy specifically, in a server, in a virtual environment. You now have a choice to do an enterprise version, which is containerized in Linux, and you can still run it on Windows machines. You can have it in your data center. You can have it in a private cloud. You can have it in SaaS, and you can have hybrid. You can have different things for different locations in your infrastructure. It's all great. It's the same software for now. I think the plan is to move away from perpetual licensing and get to a place where you have a term license where you're constantly getting fed the latest and greatest features, and the expectation is that you're just a couple versions behind the latest release all the time. But yeah, go ahead.
There really isn't too much of a difference. I mean, people are going to say, "Oh, I bought the software that's perpetual," and then term is where you would subscribe to it. But in order to stay on top of it, get the latest versions, anyways, there was a support plan that you would be a part of. And by the time you're done paying for the support plan, the two work out fairly even. Of course, we're helping companies transition from one to the other, understanding what does that mean with the licensing. But it's just another business model. But essentially, you're getting the same, probably more value now, and probably at the same type of pricing.
Way more value. I want to just take a commercial swig at this for just a second, because you said the cost is virtually the same, and that's true. The value is exponentially different as you move to term, because you have access to the well, first of all, it operationalizes the cost. Instead of a capital expense for a major upgrade, you're operationalizing the cost, and it looks different from an accounting standpoint. And there are things you can write off operationally that are different than capitalization. There is every time somebody else, one of the other 52 systems you have in your infrastructure, doesn't upgrade, being on the latest version with the latest releases and constantly making that change actually reduces the opportunity for disruption, because the outages are minor, and as other systems are getting upgraded, they're doing the same thing to stay in sync with Windows, or to stay in sync with the latest and greatest technologies and security functionality. So everybody's kind of working together to keep the system live and going. You're constantly getting the latest and greatest features. I think when you go right now, if you have plant applications, you have a perpetual plant applications license, that Velotic wants you to, and I think you should, move to term licenses. But the term licenses are not term licenses of the same software, which is Plant Apps. It's a term license of Proficy Smart Factory, which includes a new way to visualize, a newer way to visualize your entire enterprise and Operations Hub. It includes the historian stuff, and it's no longer a separate license. And it gives you the option for an add-on of scheduler, which, finite capacity scheduling is probably the most popular thing among our clients right now, is deployment of finite capacity scheduling stuff. So you're not moving apples to apples either. You're moving from apples to a basket of apples, and also getting the apple press, so you get some good cider, and also getting the still, so you can get some apple bourbon.
I was going to say, am I getting a distillery out of this too?
Yeah.
But to the point where you're saying about the latest features, with Operations Hub, having a team, an integrator or in-house team that can augment the experience of what the operators are seeing, moving away from the traditional auto-log screens and out-of-the-box stuff to Operations Hub just opens it up. And I guess the shout out there is the fact that using the latest functionality that Proficy provides, you're still staying out of the box. We like to use this term purpose-built, because it's not custom. It's not things that won't be supported or things that other companies that come in won't understand. You're using the REST API calls and functionality that allow it to just be a thin interface and really just be a way to fit Proficy into the specific process and step that you're in, versus having to use, any vendor is going to give you a great set of tools, some better than others. And I think Proficy provides that great foundation we're going to use out of the box as much as possible. But with Smart Factory, you get all that licensing that allows you to break out of the ordinary and come up with something that's specific to what your site needs. And that reduces training, that reduces user adoption when you can provide something that is more familiar to them, or more honed in on what they need at that moment to enter data or see something.
Yeah, showing a user what they want and need to see, and not everything that's available for them to see.
Yep.
So cloud, hybrid, on-prem, Windows XP. I'm just kidding.
There's got to be a couple out there still. I wouldn't get to.
Yeah. No matter what the choices you make as a user of the software, you have a lot of options. There's a great product in Velotic's Proficy and ThingWorks and Kepware that can run in any one of those environments. So just wanted to talk today about what those options even mean. So it's been a great conversation, Chris. I think appreciate you hanging out with me today on this one. And any other closing comments on cloud, hybrid, SaaS? Crazy?
No, it was a fun topic. And I'll say this, with everything, especially going to SaaS, it requires people to relearn plant applications, relearn Proficy, because all the latest stuff that Velotic is putting out requires a new way of doing things, especially when you go to SaaS. There's no more stored procedures. You don't have access to the database. They have to keep that locked down. So it is using the new interfaces. It is making that jump. So we're happy to help lead the way and understand the right way to do things. And, we're here to help others do the same.
Yeah, I do want to clarify. The user experience does change for the client, but it doesn't require new training. But the way the software is deployed and integrated and all that, it's a new era for system integrators. You cannot survive deploying plant apps the way it was done 5 years ago. It
just doesn't exist. It's moving away from that, and they're going to keep the legacy going for people that continue to maintain, and that's an awesome thing that they're doing to keep that base there. But they're also encouraging in different ways. Let's get everybody up to speed, but what it means is less customization. We're asking, it's about using the tools that are available versus breaking out. Of course, you're going to need some business logic in there, but that's the end of where it should be.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you.